Fight, flight, or freeze. You might be wondering, what exactly is it? Why does it happen? And how can you know if you're stuck in it? All right, let's talk about it. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. And if you find value in this video, please like it and drop me a comment. Leave feedback, just leave your general thoughts. Give me some ideas of some videos you would like me to make in the future. I make it a point to respond to every single comment. So this video is going to focus more in general on what we even mean when we say a fight, flight, or freeze response, or some people will describe it as being in like fight or flight mode. And we're going to go into some basic signs of how you can recognize if you or your loved one is stuck in this fight, flight, or freeze response. And then my next video will be focusing on why it happens and some basic tips of how to get your body out of that fight, flight, or freeze mode. So make sure to go ahead and check out that video, but let's go ahead and get into this one. So I'm going to outline 3 signs to help you figure out if you or your loved one is getting stuck in a fight, flight, or freeze response. But before that, let me tell you a little story about a guy named Jim. So Jim was a really hardworking professional. He was really respected by his colleagues. He showed a lot of leadership skills. And on the outside, he appeared really confident. Everybody looking in on him would have thought that he was just this really strong, confident guy. But underneath, he had a lot of unresolved wounds from childhood traumas. And it's not that it came out all the time, but there was one time in particular that he was about to walk into a meeting where he actually had to give a presentation. And for whatever reason that day, the way that the person in front of him closed the door and the way it latched, it brought back this memory and it sent a surge of anxiety through his body. All of a sudden, his brain just flashed back to a memory of when he was a child, something that happened repeatedly where his uncle would actually lock him and his younger brother in the closet as a punishment. And he would be in there for a long time, closed in the closet. And as he would get into that closet, he would hear that latch of the door. And for whatever reason that day, it triggered that. All of a sudden, he completely froze and felt like he couldn't move forward with his presentation. The memory was becoming completely suffocating to him. He did excuse himself to the bathroom to get some water to kind of freshen up a little bit to hopefully get a hold of himself, but he felt completely paralyzed on the inside. He felt like he couldn't move, he couldn't go forward. Well, he didn't really know what to do. This was kind of one of the worst times this had happened. He had had some memories of this before. He was aware that it happened in his past, but he had never had it overcome him like this. Ultimately, he did perform his presentation that day, but it did not go well in his mind. He felt very insecure about it. He felt shaky. He knows he didn't present himself as well as he could have, and he really felt like others probably noticed. Thankfully, Jim was in therapy, so he was able to address this and figure out why this had been triggered, maybe some other things leading up to that moment, but he was able to identify that his body was activated into this fight, flight, freeze response and learn some specific coping skills that could help him get out of it better the next time. So that leads us into 3 main signs that you or your loved one might actually be in a fight or flight freeze response. And this response in their body might be leaving them very stuck. All right, number 1, increased physical sensations. Your heart could start pounding fast. You could have rapid breathing. Your muscles could be getting tensed. It could bring on a headache or a stomach ache, even a lot of sweating. All of these are just your body's response. It thinks it's getting prepared to take action on a threat. So even though there might not actually be a real serious threat, your mind and body are feeling like there is. So it's going into this fight, flight, freeze response. And it's doing that through these extra increased physical sensations, just like you would if there really was a serious threat or in serious danger. Those different parts of your body would engage so that you could respond to that threat. We're glad when that anxiety alarm goes off when we're really close to falling off a cliff, right? So we want our body to have that response, but we just don't want it to go off when there's really not a significant threat. When you look around to other people in your life that you trust and they're saying that it's really not that much of a threat, or maybe you're looking upon this in a loved one and seeing that really this is something maybe that didn't even feel that threatening to them before, or this is something that in general is a very societal norm, and they're responding with all these increased physical responses or physical sensations. This could be a sign that they are getting stuck in the fight, flight, freeze response. This next one is hypervigilance and emotional distress. Hypervigilance just means that you are on extra alert. Your mind is telling you that there could be a threat around any corner, so you have to be super alert, watching out for this threat that's going to come after you. And with that is going to come a lot of emotional distress. It's going to be very overwhelming. You're going to maybe have panic, might be starting to have panic attacks, which could feel really helpless when you don't really know why you're having these overwhelming feelings. You combine that with all the physical sensations you're having in your body. Sometimes people will literally feel like they're dying, or their body will go into this full like paralysis mode because it starts shutting down because of this extreme hypervigilance, this emotional distress that comes on with these physical sensations. Their body just goes into complete overload, feeling like there's this major stress or major threat coming after them. So if you notice yourself really being way more alert than you really noticed you were before, or noticing that you're way more alert, hypervigilant more than others around you, maybe you notice this in a loved one, this could be a sign that you are getting stuck, or that they're getting stuck in that fight or flight and freeze response. Okay, the last one that I'm going to mention in this video is impaired cognitive functioning, or that impaired decision-making skills. So a lot of times when a person is stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze mode, it will be hard for them to make decisions. Their mind will not allow them to think through things in the same way. And I'll go a little bit more into that in the next video, but really oxygen and energy in their body is not going to their brain in the same way, because it's going to all these other parts of their body to survive or to handle this perceived threat. So a lot of times a person may get stuck on words that they used to not get stuck on. They might not even be able to remember something. They might seem like they even have a short-term memory loss sometimes, or they may just be kind of paralyzed, almost like they're paralyzed in fear or in shock, where they can't make a decision, they can't complete a sentence fully. In extreme cases, they may, truly not even be able to speak. But most of the time, it's going to be more that they're having a hard time making decisions. It feels like they're not really following through with certain thought processes that they usually can. And this could be a sign that they're getting stuck in this fight, flight, or freeze moment response. And this unfortunately could really interfere with their daily functioning. It could cause them not to perform well at work. It could interfere with personal relationships. It could cause them not to be able to keep up with their responsibilities, maybe at home with children. It can be a really scary thing for people when their mind does not seem to be functioning the way that it always has. But now that you know some key signs to this, you can be more aware, and hopefully you can start incorporating some of these other tips and coping skills that I'm going to present to you in the next video. It's always good when we can understand ourselves better and we can recognize what's actually going on, because sometimes when these things start up, we don't even realize what's happening at first, and we might attribute it to other things. And then once we figure out that's what it is, we know actually how to handle it and treat it better. If you are somebody who maybe is just getting triggered, more mild triggers, you find yourself having some social anxiety, you notice that you have some low self and social confidence, make sure that you go to the description below this video so you can find out more about my self and social confidence course. You can either email me if you have more questions, or you can even set up a free consultation call with me if you have questions about and are interested in this digital course. This could be a great fit for people who do not have time to meet week after week one-on-one with someone, or maybe they're not interested in that. They would rather do something more self-paced, do it on their own, but they really want to be more confident. They want to break through some of these barriers. They no longer want to freeze up when they're in social interactions. They want to figure out why they are the way they are and realize that it's not part of their personality, but it is something that can be really overcome so that they can actually enjoy social interactions and enjoy being 100% themselves. Also, of course, if you are dealing with past trauma and you have never processed that in therapy, that could be a great thing for you to do, to find a therapist. Great resources like psychologytoday.com. You can find therapists in your area. Also, asking your doctor, asking trusted people in your life, maybe if there's somebody that they've gone to, and you can find some good resources there. So I want to make sure I say this really quickly. If you are someone that has significant trauma and you find yourself going into that fight, flight, or freeze response very often, I highly recommend you get set up with a licensed mental health professional who specializes in trauma. And preferably someone who does have some specific methods they use for trauma. EMDR is a very effective trauma treatment that is really good with desensitizing the body to triggers and can help you get out of that fight, flight, or freeze response when it's coming from a significant complex trauma history. So be sure to watch the next video to learn a little bit more about the fight, flight, or freeze response and why it even happens, and to pick up some tips of how to get yourself unstuck.